The main hall of Valmont Manor was in absolute silence. 50 guests stopped chewing, French champagne flutes frozen in mid-air, all eyes fixed on the same scene. Isabella Valmont, heiress to $80 million, contemptuously ripping open a package wrapped in old newspaper. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled, not with excitement, but with restrained anger as she tore away the yellowed layers of paper. Across the 50-foot table, laden with French porcelain, Mrs. Carman stood, her calloused hands clasped at her chest, praying softly. It was Christmas Eve, exactly 15 minutes until midnight, and something impossible was about to happen. The 25-foot Christmas tree glittered with lights imported from Switzerland, each ornament costing more than Mrs. Carman's monthly salary. Artificial snow fell gently from the automated ceiling, creating the perfect illusion of a European Christmas in the New York heat. The supper lay untouched. Turkey stuffed with black truffles, Norwegian smoked salmon, Iranian caviar, French desserts that cost $15,000. But no one was paying attention to the luxurious food. Everyone was watching Isabella unwrap that ridiculous gift, that pauper's wrapping, that offense packaged in newsprint that should have gone straight into the trash. When the last piece of newspaper fell to the Italian marble floor, Isabella froze. Her fingers touched the cold metal of an antique gold pocket watch, its chain worn by time. For 3 eternal seconds, she just stared at the object, uncomprehending, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. Then, with hands now trembling uncontrollably, she turned the watch over and read the engraving on the back. Her voice came out in a broken whisper that echoed through the silent hall. To Isabella, my beloved granddaughter, you are my greatest gift. Wherever I am, I will always be with you. Grandpa loves you forever. Christmas 2009. Isabella collapsed. It wasn't a delicate, controlled cry, appropriate for a millionaire heiress in front of 50 witnesses. It was a complete breakdown, an animal sound of pain accumulated for 15 years, exploding all at once. She fell to her knees on the cold floor, her $50,000 party dress dragging in the artificial snow, clutching the watch to her chest as if it were the only real thing in that entire manor of lies. Mascara-streaked tears ran down her perfectly made-up face, destroying the mask of coldness she had worn for so long. Mrs. Carman took a step forward, her own eyes brimming, and the entire manor witnessed the impossible, the richest woman in New York crying in the arms of her housekeeper. But how did a simple housekeeper, who earned $1,500 a month, get the watch that an $80 million heiress had been searching for 15 years? How did Mrs. Carman, who lived in a 2-room flat in Hope's End and took 3 buses to work, find the one object in the world capable of melting Isabella Valmont's heart of ice? To understand the miracle that happened that Christmas Eve, we need to go back 3 months to when it all began with a forgotten ad in a dusty thrift shop. Because every impossible Christmas story has a humble beginning, and this one started with a housekeeper who believed in what everyone else called madness, that generosity can transform even the coldest heart in the world. 3 months earlier, in September, Valmont Manor was already breathing in the preparations for the most expensive Christmas in its history. Isabella sat in her imported mahogany office, surrounded by catalogues from renowned decorators, calculating how much she would spend to impress the company's partners. $500,000 on decorations, $200,000 on the feast, $300,000 on strategic gifts for people she secretly despised. From the hallway, Mrs. Carman watched her employer organize that party without a single smile on her face, without a spark of emotion in her empty eyes. It was like this every year. Isabella transformed Christmas into a cold corporate event, a social obligation that had to be fulfilled with maximum efficiency and zero feeling. Mrs. Carman was 58 years old, and 12 of those years had been dedicated to cleaning that 3-story manor. She woke up at 4 in the morning, caught the first bus at 5:15, and arrived at 6:30 to begin the routine she knew by heart, polishing the 1,300 square feet of marble, cleaning the 17 imported glass windows, tidying the 8 bedrooms that no one ever used. She returned home at 7 at night, taking 3 crowded buses, arriving exhausted at her 2 simple rooms in Hope's End. But every Christmas, without fail, she brought Isabella a handmade gift. Handkerchiefs embroidered during sleepless nights, homemade cakes made with cheap ingredients but from a recipe her late husband loved, cards decorated with colored paper, and a common pen. Christmas was the most important time of year for Carmen, but not for the obvious reasons. Her husband, John, died in a bus accident on December 24, 2010, on his way home from work with her present in his backpack. Since that day, Christmas had become the only time of year she felt John closer, as if he were watching from heaven, smiling as she arranged the small cardboard nativity scene he had built on their last Christmas together. That was why she insisted on giving handmade gifts, on celebrating with faith and simplicity, on believing the Christmas spirit was real even when the world screamed otherwise. And that's why it hurt so much to see Isabella, the girl she had helped raise, transformed into a bitter woman who treated Christmas like corporate theater. Isabella was 32 years old and had $80 million, inherited from the grandfather who died alone on Christmas 2010. She was 17 when they found him in the manor's library, sitting in his favorite armchair, holding a picture of her as a child, a massive heart attack that didn't even leave time to call for help. Isabella was at a party with friends, her phone on silent, missing the 23 desperate calls from the staff. She arrived at 3 in the morning to find the cold body of the only man who had ever truly loved her. Since that cursed Christmas, she vowed never again to be naive enough to believe in feelings. "Christmas is a lie," she repeated every year. "Nobody really cares. It's just theater for the poor to feel good about themselves." The cruel irony was that she had inherited everything, but had no one real. Just parties full of hangers-on who only called when they needed money or connections. In October, everything changed when Carmen accidentally overheard a conversation she wasn't supposed to. Isabella was on the phone with her lawyer, her voice cold and decisive echoing down the hall. "This Christmas will be the last one here. After the holidays, put everything up for sale. The manor, the companies, everything. I'm moving to Miami, starting over far away from these leeches." Carmen felt the floor drop out from under her. Not for herself, but for Isabella. The girl was going to abandon the only thing that still connected her to the grandfather who had loved her, sell the memories, run away from the pain instead of healing it. And worse, she was going to do it at Christmas, the time her grandfather loved most, turning the date into a synonym for final defeat. In that moment, Carmen made an impossible decision. She had to make Isabella remember that there was still love in the world, that the Christmas spirit her grandfather championed wasn't a lie, that she didn't have to die inside just to survive. But how could a poor housekeeper save a millionaire heiress's Christmas? On November 15th, Mrs. Carmen was returning home on the crowded bus when she saw the torn ad taped to a post near her stop. "Second start thrift shop selling antique pocket watch with engraving, $4,500, one owner." Her heart pounded because she knew that description. It was Isabella's grandfather's watch, the one stolen from the manor 15 years ago during a New Year's Eve party. Isabella had searched for months, hired private detectives, offered a $50,000 reward, but the watch had vanished like smoke. And now here it was, advertised on a faded poster, a 15-minute bus ride from Carmen's house, costing 3 times her monthly salary. It was impossible, but it was real. The following Saturday, Carmen went to the thrift shop, her heart in her throat. The owner, Mrs. Irene, a 70-year-old woman, confirmed it. "It's his, dear. I bought it from a desperate man 2 years ago. He needed money for treatment. I didn't know it was stolen, I swear." Carmen held the watch with trembling hands, read the engraving that brought tears to her eyes. It was Isabella's grandfather's voice, imprinted in metal, his love eternalized in simple words. In that moment she decided, no matter the price, no matter the sacrifice, she was going to buy that watch and give it to Isabella for Christmas. She would prove that kindness still existed in the world, that the Christmas spirit her grandfather championed hadn't died with him. But she needed $4,500 when she only earned $1,500 a month. The following Monday, Isabella found out that Carmen was saving for something special because Julia, the cook, mentioned it innocently during lunch. That evening, during a dinner with 10 important partners, Isabella decided to turn it into a joke to entertain her guests. Everyone, "Did you know Carmen is saving up?" she announced loudly, laughing. "Is she going to buy a mansion too, or maybe an imported car?" Laughter echoed through the hall as Carmen served the wine, her face burning with humiliation, her eyes downcast to hide the tears. But she didn't reveal her plan, didn't give Isabella the satisfaction of knowing. She just took a deep breath and repeated mentally, "It's for her own good. She needs to remember what it's like to be loved." Carmen began to work secretly on weekends, cleaning her neighbors' houses. She woke up at 3 in the morning on Saturdays, cleaned 4 houses for $50 each, and returned exhausted at 8 at night. She stopped eating lunch, surviving on just bread and butter, to save the $15 a day for her meal. She sold her old TV for $200, her old refrigerator for $300, the wedding jewelry she had kept for 15 years for $800. Every cent went into an envelope hidden inside her Bible, and every night she counted the money, praying, "Lord, help me get there. Let me give her this gift. Let me show her that her grandfather's love didn't die." In 3 weeks, she had saved $1,200, but she was still $3,300 short and time was running out. In early December, everything fell apart. Isabella found out about the extra cleaning jobs because a neighbor casually remarked, "Your employee is amazing. She even works on Sundays." The explosion was brutal. Isabella summoned Carmen to the office in front of Marcus and Julia. "You'll come to work tired and break my expensive things. You are forbidden from cleaning anywhere else." Carmen tried to explain, but Isabella cut her off. "And you know what? That cheap little gift you bring every year, I throw it away without even opening it. Every single year." The words were like knife thrusts, but Carmen just lowered her head and left, holding back her tears until she reached the staff bathroom. That night, she missed one of her extra cleaning jobs because Isabella deliberately kept her until 10 at night, organizing closets that didn't need organizing. She was still $1,800 short, and there were only 3 weeks left until Christmas. On December 20th, just 4 days before Christmas, Mrs. Carmen woke up to a call that made her world collapse. It was her son, Daniel, his voice desperate. "Mom, Grandma had a stroke. She's in the ICU. She needs $3,000 for a treatment the insurance won't cover. Otherwise, Mom, they said she might not make it past Christmas." Carmen sat on the bed, looked at the envelope inside the Bible where she had $2,700 hard-earned dollars, 3 months of absolute sacrifice, and felt the universe crumble. Her mother, the woman who had raised her alone, who had worked as a laundress for 50 years, was dying. And she had the money. But it was the money for the watch, the gift that would save Isabella, the impossible plan she had promised to fulfill. How could she choose between her dying mother and the promise to heal a broken heart? Carmen held the watch, which she had already acquired with the $2,700 she'd saved. Mrs. Irene had agreed to accept the rest later because, "I saw your sacrifice, child, and that's worth more than money." The watch was there, wrapped in old newspaper because she had no money for proper gift wrap, hidden in a shoebox in the back of her closet. She looked at that simple package and cried all the tears she had held back for 3 months. "Forgive me, Lord," she whispered. "I was selfish. My mother is dying, and I'm here worried about a gift for someone who humiliates me every day. What kind of daughter am I?" She picked up her phone to call Mrs. Irene and ask to return the watch, but her hand wouldn't obey. Something inside her screamed that giving up now would be betraying not only Isabella, but her grandfather, the Christmas spirit, everything she believed in. Marcus, the driver, discovered the crisis when he saw Carmen crying hidden in the laundry room. She told him everything: her mother in the ICU, the money she didn't have, the watch she had to return. Marcus said nothing, just left. 2 hours later, he returned with an envelope, $2,200. We took up a collection. Me, Julia, the gardener, the cleaning lady from next door. Everyone who knows you and knows who you really are. Carmen tried to refuse, but Marcus held her hands. "Mrs. Carmen, you'll pay us back when you can, but today we're loaning it to you, because you deserve to have both, to save your mother and to give Isabella that gift." She accepted, crying, promising to pay back every cent, even knowing it would take years. That night, Daniel paid for the treatment, and Carmen's mother was saved. But now Carmen had a debt of $2,200 and $0 in her account. On December 23rd, the eve of the eve, Isabella made an offer that sounded like a cruel test of fate. "Carmen, I need you to work on the 24th, 25th, and 26th, 72 hours straight. I'll pay you a $5,000 bonus." It was exactly the money Carmen needed to pay off the debt to her colleagues and still have some left over for her family's Christmas meal. But it meant working 3 days straight, missing Christmas with her children and grandchildren, losing the only chance to visit her mother in the hospital. It meant sacrificing everything. Isabella watched her hesitation with a cold smile. "Either you accept or you look for another job in January. Your choice." Carmen took a deep breath, thought about the debt, thought about her family, and thought that sometimes love demands painful losses. "I accept," she whispered, and Isabella smiled triumphantly, unaware that she was witnessing the greatest act of generosity she would ever see. On the night of the 24th, while preparing the manna for the supper, Carmen saw something that changed everything. Isabella was alone in the library, sitting in the same armchair where her grandfather had died, holding a photo of him crying silently. All the guests had cancelled when they found out she was selling the company. The manor was decorated for 50 people, but there would be no one there besides the staff. Isabella looked at Carmen with red eyes, and for the first time in 12 years, asked something genuine. "Carmen, do you think my grandfather would be proud of me? Of who I've become?" Her voice broke at the end, the mask of coldness finally cracking. Carmen approached slowly, placed a hand on her employer's shoulder. "Your grandfather loved you more than anything, and true love never dies, child. Never." Isabella broke down, confessing, "I hate Christmas because it reminds me I'm alone. He was the only person who truly loved me, and I wasn't even there in time to say goodbye." It was the first time Carmen saw the girl behind the heiress, and she knew she was doing the right thing. At 11:30 p.m. on December 24th, the 50-foot table was set with absurd perfection. Porcelain china that cost $40,000, solid silver cutlery, Czech crystal goblets. But only 4 chairs were occupied. Isabella at the head, Marcus and Julia on one side, Mrs. Carmen on the other. The luxurious feast grew cold, untouched, because no one had the courage to eat while Isabella stared at the 46 empty seats with a blank expression. Then she did something surprising. "You are the only real people in my life. Please have supper with me, not as employees, as family." Her voice came out weak, vulnerable, stripped of all arrogance. It was the first time in 15 years Isabella had asked for something, instead of ordering it. The gift exchange began with Isabella handing out thick envelopes, $10,000 bonuses for each of them. Marcus and Julia thanked her emotionally, but Isabella just waved it off as if it were nothing. Then Mrs. Carmen took a deep breath, her hands shaking violently, and pulled the old newspaper package tied with string from her worn-out bag. The silence grew heavy as she placed it on the mahogany table, the brutal contrast between luxury and simplicity, making everyone hold their breath. Isabella looked at the package as if it were a personal insult. Old newspaper, plain string, not even any tape. "Carmen," she said with a nervous laugh, "what is this wrapping? Old newspaper? Seriously?" She picked it up with 2 fingers as if she might be contaminated, and Julia and Marcus exchanged worried glances, knowing the sacrifice behind that paper. Isabella opened the package with theatrical disdain, ripping the newspaper with unnecessary violence, clearly making a point of showing her contempt. The pieces of paper fell to the Italian marble floor like sad confetti, and she rolled her eyes. This must have cost, what, $5 on the street? But then her hands touched the cold metal, and she froze completely. Time stopped. The gold pocket watch gleamed under the light of the crystal chandelier, its worn chain dangling between her trembling fingers. Isabella couldn't breathe, couldn't process it, because that object was impossible. It was her grandfather's watch. The watch that had been stolen 15 years ago. The watch she had searched for months without success. The watch she thought she would never see again. Marcus and Julia stood up at the same time, recognizing the object instantly. "My God," Julia whispered, her hand to her mouth, "it's your grandfather's watch." Isabella turned the watch over with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and when she saw the engraving on the back, Her world collapsed. She read it aloud, each word coming out broken, shattered. To Isabella, my beloved granddaughter, you are my greatest gift. Wherever I am, I will always be with you. Grandpa loves you forever. Christmas 2009. It was his last Christmas. 1 month before he died. He had it engraved, knowing he didn't have much time, and Isabella never knew because the watch was stolen before he could give it to her. Until now. Until this humble housekeeper, in old newspaper wrapping, returned 15 years of lost love. The cry came without warning, without control, without dignity. Isabella collapsed from her chair, falling to her knees on the cold floor, her party dress dragging in the artificial snow that continued to fall from the automated ceiling. She clutched the watch to her chest and sobbed, as she hadn't cried since her grandfather's death, an animal sound of accumulated pain exploding all at once.
15 years of anger, loneliness, cynicism and coldness, all melting away in hot mascara-streaked tears. How? She managed to ask between sobs, looking at Carmen. How did you get this? And Carmen, with tears in her own eyes, told her everything. The 3 months of extra work, the weekend cleaning jobs, selling her TV, her refrigerator, her wedding ring, going hungry, her mother in the hospital, the $4,500 that was worth 3 entire months of her salary. Isabella understood. This woman she had humiliated for years, mocked, treated as invisible, had just given her the most valuable gift she would ever receive. "Forgive me," Isabella begged, clutching Carmen's hands. "Please, for the love of God, forgive me for everything I've done to you." And Carmen held her as Isabella cried in her arms, and for the first time in 15 years, Christmas made sense again. Isabella woke up on December 25th at 6 in the morning, clutching her grandfather's watch to her chest. She hadn't been able to sleep, spending the entire night staring at that impossible object, rereading the engraving 1,000 times, crying and laughing at the same time. At 8 o'clock, she called Dr. Harrison, the lawyer. "Cancel everything, the sale of the manor, the companies, the move to Miami. I'm not abandoning my grandfather's legacy, not after what happened yesterday." Then she took a pen and paper and did something she never had the courage to do. She listed every cruelty she had committed in the last 15 years, every humiliation, every cruel word, every moment of coldness. The list was 3 pages long. When she finished, she cried again, but this time it was with shame and a determination to change. At 9 o'clock, Isabella called Mrs. Carmen, who was at the hospital visiting her mother. "Mrs. Carmen, please, come to the manor with your entire family. Your son, your grandchildren, your mother if she can leave the hospital. Please, I've prepared something." Carmen hesitated, having planned to spend the day at the hospital, but something in Isabella's voice was different. It was genuine, vulnerable, human. She accepted. When she arrived at 11 in the morning with Daniel, her 3 grandchildren, and her mother in a wheelchair, she found Isabella in the kitchen. Not in the office giving orders. In the kitchen, wearing an apron, preparing food. The $80 million heiress was making rice, beans, simple side dishes because she didn't know how to make anything sophisticated. "I wanted to make a real supper," Isabella explained, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Not luxury, just real." Christmas lunch was on the veranda, not in the formal dining hall. A simple wooden table, homemade food made with love and many mistakes, mismatched plates because Isabella had never cooked in her life. But there was laughter. For the first time in 15 years, genuine laughter echoed through Valmont Manor. Isabella played with Carmen's grandchildren, taught them games her grandfather had taught her, helped wash the dishes, and sat on the floor to assemble a jigsaw puzzle. And she discovered something revolutionary. Happiness didn't cost $500,000 in decorations. It cost $0 and required only presence, attention, and real love. "My grandfather always wanted me to have this," she whispered to Carmen as she watched the children play. A family, real connection, and I wasted 15 years running away. After lunch, Isabella asked everyone to sit down. She was nervous, her hands sweating. Carmen, I want to make you a proposal. I'm going to create a foundation in my grandfather's name to help families like yours, and I want you to be my partner, not an employee, a partner. Carmen tried to refuse, but Isabella insisted, it's not charity, it's recognition. You have something I lost, humanity. You're going to teach me how to be a person again, how to have real Christmas spirit. And together, we'll help other families, especially invisible employees like doormen, janitors and cleaners, people the world ignores but who keep everything running. Carmen's grandchildren would get full scholarships. Her mother would receive VIP treatment for the rest of her life. Daniel would have a job at the foundation. It was more than money. It was dignity, respect, recognition. Isabella took the watch from her pocket and put the chain around her neck. I'll never take it off again. It will remind me every day of who I need to be, of the man my grandfather was, of the woman you are, Carmen, of the true meaning of Christmas. That afternoon, as the sun set over New York, Valmont Manor finally had the Christmas it deserved, simple, true, and full of genuine love. Isabella understood that her grandfather hadn't left her $80 million. He had left her the watch, because love is the only gift that truly matters, and a humble housekeeper had just taught that to a millionaire heiress through the greatest act of generosity that Manor had ever witnessed. 1 year later, at Christmas 2026, Valmont Manor was completely transformed. The gold plaque at the entrance read, "The Valmont Grandfather Foundation, Support Center for Invisible Workers," and the gate was open to 200 families arriving for the annual community supper. Isabella was at the door, personally welcoming each person, no longer dressed in designer clothes, but in simple clothes and an apron, her grandfather's watch shining around her neck. Beside her, Mrs. Carmen wore an executive director badge, smiling at every cleaner, doorman and janitor who entered, overcome with emotion. The manor that once breathed empty luxury now exuded true love, and the Christmas spirit Isabella's grandfather had so cherished had finally come home. Isabella's transformation was radical and permanent. She didn't just donate money, she worked daily at the foundation, organized events, visited families, and knew every story personally. "Generosity always returns," Carmen said in an interview with a local newspaper. "Even if only in the form of inner peace. I gave Isabella a gift, but she gave me something greater, purpose." Isabella added in the same interview, her eyes welling up, "My grandfather didn't leave me $80 million. He left me the watch to remind me that love is the only real gift, and a humble housekeeper taught me that when I needed it most." The lesson was simple but revolutionary. Christmas isn't about how much you spend, it's about how much you truly care. In 12 months, the Valmont Grandfather Foundation transformed 1,200 families. 89 children of cleaners, doormen and janitors received full university scholarships. 300 mothers received medical treatment they couldn't afford. 500 families had dignified Christmases for the first time. The story spread. 15 other wealthy entrepreneurs created similar foundations, inspired by Isabella's example. Marcus coordinated the professional training program. Julia ran the monthly community suppers. Carmen's mother, fully recovered from her stroke, volunteered 3 times a week. And all this transformation began with a pocket watch and a housekeeper who believed in the impossible when no one else did. The Christmas tradition changed completely at Valmont Manor. Every December 24th, 200 families gathered for a community supper where rich and poor sat at the same table, ate the same food, and celebrated the same Christmas spirit. Isabella made a point of serving personally, washing dishes and clearing tables, because I finally understood what my grandfather was trying to teach me. Serving others is the greatest honor, not a humiliation. The children played together without class distinction. The gifts were simple but meaningful, and in the center of the main table, in an illuminated glass dome, sat the watch that started it all, so that no one would forget that miracles happen when there is true generosity. What saved Isabella Valmont's Christmas? It wasn't her money, not the 80 million she inherited, not the luxury or power or influence. It was the $4,500 gift that Mrs. Carmen bought by selling even her wedding ring, wrapped in old newspaper because she had no money for pretty paper. It was the Christmas spirit that Isabella had sworn didn't exist, but which a humble housekeeper proved was the most powerful force in the world. Today, Isabella knows the truth that changed her life. True Christmas is in the heart. The greatest gift has no price, and true love never dies. And you, what simple gift changed your Christmas? Do you know a Mrs. Carmen in your life who deserves recognition? Because Christmas is about impossible love becoming real, and miracles happen when you give without expecting anything. If you believe generosity transforms lives, leave a like to honor all the Mrs. Carmens of the world. And tell us in the comments, what was the most moving gift you've ever received? Subscribe for more stories that prove the Christmas spirit is real and can change lives forever.